It is our Cavs Roundtable here on cleveland.com. I am Dan Labbe, and joining me live here on the set from 92.3 The Fan, Joe Lull, from waitingfornextyear.com, Scott Sargent, and from Now Slam Magazine, Brendan Bowers. You might also know him from his former Stepien Rules days. Welcome aboard, guys. We're going to preview the Cavaliers. As Scott and I were saying, as you might have heard, there is a basketball game tomorrow, and it is the introduction of the new Big Three. Let's just start with kind of the buzz around this game. And I'm wondering the last time, Scott, there was a buzz this big in Cleveland about like a singular sporting event.
No, it's incredible. If you go anywhere near the Q right now, you can't park on the street because there's trucks and forklifts and you name it, of things trying to be set up, whether it's stages, whether it's Sports Center, whether it's, you name it, and it's there. And it's incredible to hear just the general buzz. Go into any retail place and they are so excited about tomorrow. It's unbelievable.
Brendan, I mean, can you think of just a Cavs game? I mean, the finals, anything that matches this excitement?
The game that comes to my mind is the 2007 Eastern Conference Finals when Daniel Gibson scored 31 points, shot him into the finals. That night in Cleveland was like the coolest night that I've ever seen as a Cleveland sports fan. If the streets were packed, the bars were packed, it was amazing. Tomorrow night's game, I feel, is bigger than that. I feel like the reaction is more than that. The energy is more than that. And no, to answer your question, this is, I believe, uncharted waters as far as the Cleveland Cavaliers are concerned.
Joe, I mean, you're downtown every Sunday doing your Browns pregame stuff. Anything at all?
Well, I would actually combine Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals that Brendan talked about with the NBA Finals, because that Game 6, if you were outside the queue after that game, the plaza at Gateway was packed with people. I'm sure a lot of people have that picture. I know. Yeah. Actually, I've had it as the desktop, like the wallpaper on my computer for the past.
How many strangers did you high-five that night?
Unbelievable. One of them being Usher, which was an incredible experience in and of itself. But also, I think the other aspect of this is the celebrity that goes with this. Yeah. You mentioned ESPN Sports Center. It's going to be on East 4th Street. Nike has an event going on across the street from the casino and the LeBron banner that's going up. The NBA Finals brought a lot of celebrity to town and a lot of parties and events. I think this is kind of a combination of both events. And I don't know that we'll have ever seen anything like this before, what we're about to see tomorrow.
Between the 3D court projection, Humongotron, I don't know. I don't think there's anything like it. But there is basketball to talk about. So let's get to the basketball. Let's break down this Cavaliers team, and let's look at that big three: LeBron, Kevin Love, Kyrie-Irving. How does this compare in your guys' mind? A lot of people have talked about this to when the Heat came together, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, the star power there is going to draw those parallels to the Heat. I would argue that these three, the big three, are better than the three that went to Miami. I think Kyrie-Irving's younger and more energetic and just a better fit for LeBron James than than Dwayne Wade was. And I think the same for Kevin Love compared to Chris Bosh. So, yes, and I also think these big three have the right pieces in place around them, where Miami found the hard way that they had to add those floor spacing shooters to the mix, and then obviously that propelled them to a championship after getting ousted by Dallas. So I think the pieces are in place. It's just going to come down to execution and make sure that it's not necessarily how many games they're going to win in the regular season or how many All-Stars they have or how many box scores they fill up. It's going to come down to April 15th through the middle of June to be the most important part.
Joe, is that maybe what's different about this big three than the Heat's big three? A different LeBron, a more mature LeBron. You have an actual point guard on this team. Kevin Love maybe fits a little bit better. You're not going to have as much kind of fighting. I don't want to say that Dwayne Wade and LeBron fought over the ball, but there were a lot of questions as to who was the guy, who was going to dominate the basketball.
Two ball dominant players that had been the alpha dog on their teams. And yes, Kyrie's been the alpha dog for the Cavaliers since he came here, but he's been the alpha dog on a 20-30 win basketball team. So it's very different. I think from a basketball sense, this is a much better fit because Kyrie-Irving, yes, he can be ball dominant, but he's a lot more comfortable off the ball than Dwayne Wade was. And if you look at Dwayne Wade throughout his entire career, obviously a tremendous career, one of the best players we've seen, Dwayne Wade has never been a stretch-the-floor outside shooter, which Kyrie-Irving can be a marksman in that area. Same thing with Chris Bosh. The last couple of years, we've seen Chris Bosh standing outside the three-point arc, just jacking threes. That was not his game in Toronto. So both Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh had to tweak their game in order to fit around LeBron and to make that a fit that obviously won 2 championships and went to all those finals. But from a basketball sense, Kevin Love, natural three-point shooter, Kyrie-Irving, natural three-point shooter, I think they fit. The difference is you had the experience playoff-wise and obviously the championship ring with Dwayne Wade in Miami that first year that you don't have now. You have LeBron with the 2 rings, but Kyrie, Kevin Love, there's been a lot made of this. Those 2 of our big 3 have never even played in a playoff game. So that, I think, is the major question.
That's the big question, Brendan. Are you concerned about that playoff experience?
Not really. No, not really, because you have that playoff and championship experience throughout the roster. James Jones isn't going to play that much, but a guy like that in the locker room is valuable to these Tristan Thompsons and Dion Waiters. These guys are 23, 24 years old, 22. The Mike Millers, the Shawn Marions, and then, of course, LeBron. He won it twice himself. So I think there's enough postseason playoff experience throughout that locker room that the fact that Kevin Love hasn't been there yet, even though he's put up Hall of Fame numbers already, that's not a concern to me. I think that that's all just going to be part of the process and part of the learning process and blending these guys together, like Scott and Joe were talking about from a fit standpoint.
How hard do you think that's going to be, Scott?
I don't think it'll be hard. I think it might be bumpy out of the gate. David Blatt will tell you that he coaches more on feel than he does on a script in terms of when he subs in or when he calls timeouts and things like that. So once he gets the feel for how he's going to orchestrate his team in that standpoint, I think it's going to be all systems go.
All right, let's talk about David Blatt. I think if you're looking at this team, that's kind of one of the bigger question marks, Joe. David Blatt, coming from overseas, has never coached in the NBA. Seems like a different kind of coach, almost that new breed. Loves the three-pointer. He's going to travel a little bit. He's going to be more aggressive. Is that going to work?
Absolutely. Now I'll say proudly, I was one of very few voices in this town that championed his cause from the time his name came up. And coaching is coaching. Let's ask ourselves this question. If the Cavaliers, which there was a lot of bogus rumor out there when the coaching search was going on, but if they had gone ahead and brought in a John Calipari, would we feel better about John Calipari, who failed miserably when he coached the New Jersey Nets way back in the day and has been a tremendous college coach? I mean, you have to kind of compare it to the other options. And you're talking about a guy, Dan Gilbert said it in his press conference today, and David Blatt, that has never lost, no matter where he's been, and he's been a lot of places overseas, he's never lost. So basketball is basketball. I think there's also an element to this with the coach where he's used to dealing with all sorts of different type of egos, guys that have come from the NBA, maybe failed in the NBA, decided they had to take their game overseas, and probably thought, well, I'm going to be the man here because I played in the States and now I'm coming overseas. So I think he's been exposed to more than maybe people give him credit for, and I think that'll be one of the most pleasant surprises we see with this Cavs team is we're going to have, I think, one of the best coaches in the NBA by the time this is all said and done. I'm very confident in his abilities.
Think about David Blatt. He takes this job. Obviously, Kyrie's already here. Then all of a sudden, LeBron's here. Then Kevin Love is here. This guy probably went out and bought a lottery ticket at some point this summer, figuring he was just going to win that too. Do you think he can handle that big three in coaching these personalities?
I do, and I hope he gets credit for it. I think you're going to have a lot of people who see the Cavs winning these basketball games and just assume they're on autopilot. And that's not going to be the case. There's still going to be a lot of tinkering that has to be done inside of, like, to your point about the egos, or to your point about a lot of players who are used to playing a lot of minutes who may not see those minutes anymore. Blatt's going to have to orchestrate all that, and he should, just like David Griffin should get some credit for putting all the pieces together. Obviously, LeBron is a big part of having that happen, but he still, pulled the strings on a lot of these issues too. He's the one who took Shawn Marion to lunch. He's the one who, made the phone calls. He's the one who brought in, I hate to make Lou Edmondson like a key addition, but he could be a prime defender for this team in crunch time.
He could be a 10th man.
Right, and so that's all a big part. So I hope, long way of saying that David Blatt does get the credit because I think he can do it, and I think he will.
And Brendan, there's a lot of people saying David Blatt could be Coach of the Year this year. Can that happen?
I mean, I tell you two things about David. Like, number one, David Blatt, he expects to succeed. Like, he believes, these guys are here, and he believes that he's here to win a championship. So, that's number one. But the thing that, why I think it can happen is because the way he went about this, I wrote this in August after talking with Dion Waiters, is he's trying to get to know all these guys as people first. Before he implements this revolutionary European-infused offense, he wants to know who these guys are. And I asked Dion, thinking in my head that the conversation was going to be about starter or point guard or this offense or that. And I said, what did you guys talk about? He said he wanted to know my entire life story. So I just told him from the beginning. And these are the conversations that he's having throughout the roster. And that's why I think when you do things like Scott's saying, like you're going to have to ask guys to shoot less. You're going to have to ask guys to take a different role. I think he's going to be effective that way because I think he cares about all these guys and he's trying to build it that way. So
if I could add to that,
yeah.
Dan, that's the psychological aspect of this that I think fans and sometimes the media, we don't get a grasp of because you don't see that on television. It's hard to get a sense of it unless you have a one-on-one experience with the players in the locker room or with the coach or the general manager. But if you get to know the GM of this basketball team, David Griffin, at all, I mean, he's like a psychologist. I mean, in talking to him in the past, he uses phrases like feel your spirit. I mean, this is a guy who really wants to connect with every single person in that organization and more importantly on the court in a very personal way. And that's who David Blatt is. They're the same type of person. And when you have those bumps in the road, like Brendan said, when you have to sit a guy down or he's not going to get his minutes tonight or what have you, you have to have those deep personal relationships with the guys you're talking to in order to have that go smoothly. And I think that starts at the top. It's a Dan Gilbert thing too, but it goes from Dan Gilbert to David Griffin and now down to David Blatt. And that's another reason I think we have to be hopeful is because of that psychological element that I have great confidence in with this organization where it is now.
Brendan, I'm glad you brought up Dion Waiters because Dion Waiters, this guy, look, at the end of last year, a lot of fans were sort of creating this divide between Kyrie-Irving and Dion Waiters. Thankfully, that has gone away, at least for now. For Waiters, can he accept his role with this team? And do you think it helps that he's got guys in that locker room now, like LeBron, like Mike Miller, are
absolutely.
going to say, this is what you do?
Absolutely. The divide, in my opinion, and I'll just say this on record, the criticisms of Dion Waiters as being selfish and having this feud with Kyrie-Irving, I don't believe them to be true. What you had last year, in my opinion, was two young, good players who were getting crushed every night. They were terrible. They were a bad team, and they were the two best players, so they're frustrated, which of course you should be as the leaders of the team. So I think some of that frustration got projected on Dion unfairly, and I think that, yes, with a guy, who is he supposed to lean on last season? Jarrett Jack? Who? But now he's got LeBron James.
Was brought in too.
I know, and it didn't work.
And we thought it was
so now you got LeBron James, Mike Miller, Sean Marion. I mean, those names mean a lot. And I think that it's going to be incredible for Dion's career being able to, work with LeBron. And I think the Cavaliers fans are going to be surprised at how efficient and effective that he is this year.
And Scott, I think that's the most important thing because, again, when LeBron says to you, hey, I need you to be a spot-up shooter,
exactly.
You're going to go be a spot-up shooter.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah. And just even watching them at practice today, it's Kyrie, it's LeBron, it's Kevin Love, and it's Dion Waiters practicing their shooting drills, laughing, having fun, joking around. There's no consternation between Kyrie and LeBron or anyone, So the fact that last year had so much either or between Kyrie and either you were, it was like what was the vampire movie where you're Team Edward or Team whatever. It was Team Kyrie and Team Dion, and it was just ridiculous. So it's good to see that it's Team Cavs now.
Yeah.
LeBron's a big part of that, but Dion's going to be as well.
Did we just have a Twilight reference?
I think we did.
At least you knew the name. I have no idea what the name was.
I'm a little embarrassed by that, actually. Team Edward, by the way. Dion Waiters, what do you expect from him?
I think he's going to have an outstanding year, and I think he's probably the most underrated player on the Cavaliers. One of the things we saw to a great extent in preseason is LeBron James basically going at 30%. I mean, he was not looking to get his. And I think as we go through this season with the three young guys, Dion, Kyrie, and Kevin Love, that all can score the basketball around LeBron, is he's going to look to get them theirs first. And Dion's a guy, you mentioned spot-up shooting. He shot a very high percentage on spot-up three-pointers last year. That's a key element of this offense that David Blatt's going to run. And a key element of any team that LeBron's been on that has had success is that floor spacing. So I think we'll see great things out of Dion Waiters this year. He's a tremendously skilled basketball player. I still laugh. I'm sure you guys remember the debates we had about Dion Waiters versus Harrison Barnes. And you look at Golden State right now, and Harrison Barnes just is not doing much. And I think Dion Waiters is going to, I expect him to average at least 15 points a game this year. Because LeBron, and I think Kyrie too, they're going to look to get him his. Because if you're the opposition, you're going to try and stop LeBron. Then maybe, okay, we'll try and stop Kevin Love. We'll try and stop Kyrie. The fourth guy is Dion Waiters. He could perhaps be a second guy on a lot of good teams in this league.
Yeah, his catch and shoot numbers, to Joe's point,
Yes.
were among the top 5, I think, in the NBA last year. So that's a big part of what the Cavs are trying to do.
And that's a misperception. A lot of fans, I think, see Dion as another ball-dominant player, which he's been historically. At Syracuse, he was essentially the point guard, even though he came off the bench. But those numbers Scott referenced, he is one of the better just catch and shoot players in the league. He's not a guy that has to have the ball in his hands. So if he keeps working on that aspect of his game, it's going to be huge for this Cavaliers offense.
All right, guys, you remember taking like the SATs and ACTs back in high school? I got some.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Just don't ask me my scores.
I got some fill in the blanks for you. I want to do just a few of them here. We know LeBron, obviously, the biggest offseason signing. But the most important signing of the offseason not named LeBron was, Scott?
Does Kevin Love count as a signing?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm going to say James Jones. And the reason for it is if you ask any player about, in one-on-one or in a team setting, about the locker room and the flight to Rio and all of that team-based, kind of aura, their first name that's going to come out of their mouth is James Jones. And he may not see a lot of minutes. He may have 40 DNPs this season. But at the end of the year, he's going to be a big part of why the team is still a collective unit the way they are.
Brendan?
I agree with a lot of what Scott said, and I'll just say a different guy for the sake of it. But I'll say Sean Marion for the fact that, he's looked active to me, like his hands, like he's active defensively. He's a guy that can score. He's a guy that won championship. He's a guy that thrived in an up-tempo system under Griffin for the Suns, with Steve Nash. Nash is similar to Kyrie if you kind of think about it. So I think Sean Marion's going to be a huge addition as well.
Two of the concerns people have about this basketball team are the maturity because of the youth and inexperience of, three of our four best players with Kyrie, Dion, and Kevin Love, and none of them having ever played in the playoffs. So to that, I would agree with Scott. And that James Jones and the presence in the locker room, I've already read some stories about the impact he's had, along with LeBron. And hey, when we're watching film, you guys aren't goofing off. We're watching film. We're focused. I think there's a huge impact there. But I'm going to split my vote between James Jones and Sean Marion. Because, Dan, what's the biggest question mark people have raised about the Cavaliers this year? It's outside of experience, has been defense. Sean Marion, throughout his entire career, has been one of the best on-the-ball defenders, whether it's a small forward, whether it's a point guard. And he could even take guys that are posting up, that are taller than him, down in the post. So the versatility of Sean Marion as a one-on-one defender, I think is something that's very invaluable and that not enough of us are recognizing before the season begins. But as we continue to ask the questions about defense as the season progresses, we're going to see the impact he makes on that end of the court. I don't think we can possibly state that enough, how big Sean Marion's going to be for the defense with this team.
So that thing you just said, we're not stating it enough. It's the craziest point because it's true, but you have to go so far down the list to get to Sean Marion's defense. Start with LeBron, to Kevin Love. That's just how crazy this season is.
We haven't even mentioned Mike Miller's three.
No, we haven't even talked about Mike Miller.
That was actually going to
unbelievable.
be my nominee, Mike Miller, just based on the fact that if the Heat taught us anything, it's that you need a little luck to win an NBA title. And if you have guys like Mike Miller and Ray Allen, still waiting on Ray Allen, by the way, that luck is a little easier because that ball ends up in their hands and they can hit those big shots. So having a guy like Mike Miller who's been there, who can hit that one big shot for you in a conference finals game or an NBA finals game, that's enormous.
It's like Damon Jones did once.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Daniel Marshall.
Can I say that it's awesome to
once.
see Damon Jones back, by the way?
Yeah, that's great. What is his official title?
I asked him.
Shooting.
I asked him. I said, "What's your official title?" in the hallway, and he goes, "I don't have one." So I go, "Can I just call you a high-level executive consultant?" He goes, "You said that. I didn't, but I like it."
One of the most entertaining players the Cavaliers have had since I've been a big fan and since I've been covering the teams. I always loved Damon Jones.
Yeah, absolutely. The Cavaliers will have blank starters, not all-stars, blank starters in the All-Star game.
I'm going to say one, and it's going to be LeBron.
It's a tough
and it's going to be not a fan-friendly answer. The Derrick Rose narrative is going to be huge this year. And if he can stay healthy, I think he's going to get the vote over Kyrie-Irving. And I think Kevin Love's scoring numbers are just, with the way that they segregate big men versus guards now, it's going to be hard for him to get one of those three big men spots. So I'm going to say one with LeBron James.
More than one?
Is it starters or all-stars?
Starters.
Starters. That is tough. I'm gonna say all three. I'm gonna say they're the best record in the Eastern Conference, maybe the best record in the league. You know what? No, I'm saying two. And I'm not naming my two. I'm saying two. There's no way it'll be all three. Two.
I'll speak with conviction. Three. You're going to see Kyrie-Irving, who was the starter last year. You're going to see Kevin Love. Because if you look at the way they do the All-Star rosters now, or the starters, you don't necessarily have to vote for a center. So if you actually, I did this a couple weeks ago. I looked at the Eastern Conference All-Star team from a year ago. And of course, Paul George is out this year. He's not going to be an All-Star. And I just kind of went player by player. I'm thinking, who else would you vote in there? Carmelo will get in, LeBron will get in.
Derrick Rose will get in, like Scott said.
I don't know, though. You're looking at the Cavaliers, I think, are going to become, for just casual basketball fans, the most popular team in the NBA. All-Star Starters is a popularity contest. Cavs are going to be on national TV as much as anyone in the league. I think fans that gravitate toward the LeBron storyline and to this young up-and-coming team are going to pull out those all-star ballots and just check all three Cavs that are on there. They're going to check Kyrie, Kevin Love, and LeBron James. So I really do believe all three of those guys will be starting this year.
I hope you're
possible.
right. The thing that I think is going to, that Kyrie, the Bulls-Cavs game, where Kyrie went for like 26 and 8, Andy had 22 and 8, Derrick Rose played well.
Right.
But what was the storyline the next day? It was how good Derrick Rose looked against the Cavs. And I think that national kind of push for Derrick Rose's comeback story is going to get him a few votes. That statistics, win total, it may not make a difference because I think Derrick's going to get a lot of love.
But along that popularity narrative, Kyrie-Irving has played the last 2 years. Derrick Rose, I don't want to see people have forgotten about him, but I think Kyrie-Irving is a little fresher in their minds. Plus, he's been in the news cycle a little more because of the whole big three.
It'll depend if he comes out with another Uncle Drew commercial.
Yeah, that's true.
If you want to talk about the mechanics of it, too, we know how Dan Gilbert is and his people with the Cavs at marketing. I mean, they'll be shoving ballots in fans. And we know we're going to have 20,562 at every single home game. So they're going to be shoving ballots in your hands as you walk in, as you walk out. They'll probably deliver them to you 4 times while you're at your seat.
They'll already be punched?
Yeah, they'll be in your nachos. So, I would expect a big push from the Cavs, and that's just another reason I think we'll probably see 3.
Gilbert's living room right now is probably just piled high
Right.
with ballots himself. All right, let's talk about the rest of the league. It seems like the Cavs would be the favorite to win the East. Is there a challenger, though, in the East that worries you, Scott?
Chicago's physical. If Derrick Rose can stay healthy, I think the Chicago is going to be very good. Their front court is very formidable, and Derrick Rose could be the best point guard in basketball. It's just the way it is. But other than that, in the East, I think you're gonna Washington maybe, Toronto maybe, but I think when it comes down to it, you're gonna look at Chicago if Derrick Rose is healthy as the big Eastern Conference foe.
Yeah, physical teams scare me, bro.
100%. I mean, Chicago is as good as the Cavaliers are, and as fair as all the compliments for the Cavs are. Chicago is going to be tough. It's going to be tough to beat Chicago. Like Scott said, if Derrick Rose is healthy, they add Paul Gasol, you got Joakim Noah, Jimmy Butler is a good perimeter defender. I mean, he could guard LeBron potentially. I mean, that's and Tom Thibodeau's system, like they've been without Derrick Rose and they've had major injuries. They've been in the playoffs winning series over the last couple of years. So on a baseline level with no talent, Thibodeau's team's going to be good. And like if you're telling me Noah, Paul Gasol, and a healthy Rose, that's going to be a really tough team, which makes this opening weekend so exciting because you got opening night on Thursday and then you got Chicago right now on Friday, which is going to be an amazing game.
One thing we always overlook with Chicago, though, and I agree with all of you guys, the Bulls are going to be difficult, right? The Cavs aren't going to railroad them and sweep them in a playoff series. But we say if Derrick Rose is healthy because he's missed the last couple of years. But the big addition for the Chicago Bulls that's supposed to put them over the top if Derrick Rose is healthy is Pau Gasol. And we need to add that caveat to Pau Gasol. If Pau Gasol is healthy, he's had his fair share of injury issues in LA the last couple of years. So it's 2 guys on the Chicago Bulls that are arguably, I would say, their best 2 players. Not to discount Joakim Noah, but their best 2 players. I think the injury history of both of them is a major question mark for Chicago. So I would have to put that same if he's healthy with Pau Gasol that we put with Derrick Rose.
The team I'm seeing a lot of people talk about still in the West is San Antonio. Are they the biggest threat should the Cavs win the East? Or what about Oklahoma City? Is there somebody else?
They should be the biggest threat. Returning 12 on a championship team is almost unheard of. Oklahoma City obviously is going to come down to if Kevin Durant's healthy. You're looking at about Christmas time for him to be finally up to speed. So that's kind of a wild card there. So if you had to ask me, I mean, Dallas looked good last night too. But if it comes down to it, I think San Antonio is going to be the team that the Cavs have to look out for in the West.
Yeah, I think San Antonio is the team to beat in the league. I mean, the Cavs maybe have more talent on paper, but Spurs still the favorite for sure. I think the Clippers are going to be pretty good. I mean, this is like you got a little bit more time of Doc Rivers and his system, more time with Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, those guys. I think the Clippers are.
Is going to be huge.
Yeah, for sure. They've been through a very tough time together, bond them as a team. So I think the Clippers are going to be tough, obviously, along with the the Oklahoma cities and the other the Houstons and everyone else we're talking about.
Yeah, Houston, I think, took a step back. Obviously, they made a few moves in an effort to bring in that third superstar to clear room for Chris Bosh. and they end up with Trevor Ariza. They didn't get Parsons back, obviously. So I think Houston's taken a step backwards. You always wonder about Dallas, because Mark Cuban kind of runs that organization like a fantasy team. You know, he just grabs names out of, now they get Richard Jefferson in there, and of course they've had Monte Ellis. They go out and get Tyson Chandler, bring him back after he was part of their title run. But I'm going to go with the Clippers. San Antonio just has had the feel to me, and I know they're the defending champions, that they're hanging on by a thread. And when Greg Popovich is managing the minutes and sitting guys like Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili and Tim Duncan, because he's so concerned about their health as they get into their mid to late 30s, you know, I think that eventually catches up to you. And I look at the LA Clippers and see a team that I think was derailed by the Donald Sterling controversy a year ago. They added Spencer Hawes, which will give them some great floor spacing to give Blake Griffin a little bit more room to work with, and give DeAndre Jordan more room to rebound the basketball. That leadership from Doc Rivers, and I think Chris Paul is a guy that we always say is probably the best point guard in the NBA, but he's never gotten over that hump and taken a team to that next level. I think this is the year for the Clippers, so I expect they will be the team representing the West in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, the Donald Sterling stuff for the Clippers couldn't have come at a worse time
No.
last year, because it was right. You were talking about a team that was potentially going to boycott a playoff game.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So starting fresh, you know, with Steve Ballmer, and to Joe's point about the way that the team is growing together despite an aging Chris Paul, they're going to be a really formidable team.
Although if you know anything about Steve Ballmer, and if you've seen any of his interviews, if I'm a player on the Clippers and I got to have him courtside 41 times a year, I might get annoyed. I mean, I'm sure it was annoying having Sterling around, but Ballmer's screaming and yelling, that might actually wear on me too. You know, can we just get a guy to sit there and clap like
He's
a
like the
normal
X Factor.
billionaire? Yeah.
Like a normal billionaire.
Right.
I like that.
I do want to get your guys' predictions before we go. But first, we're going to go back to that ACT-SAT theme. I want to ask you guys some true or false. So my guy Chris Fedor is convinced the Cavs can win 70 games this year. I don't know about that, so I'm going to put the number at 65. True or false, the Cavs will win 65 this year.
I'm still going false. I think you're going to have a minute allocation that's going to lend to a lot of nights of LeBron maybe either taking a night off or playing fewer minutes. Same for Kyrie, same for Kevin Love, same for Anderson Varejao. And I think you're reaching 65. I mean, we know how often they had to win. Would they go 40-1 at home the year they won 60-plus games?
66, yeah.
So that's the kind of season you have to get to 65 wins. And I just don't see this team being able to do that in the regular season.
Yeah, false as well. And I'll just point this out that I think a lot of people don't think about. During LeBron's 4 years in Miami, they won 60 or more once. And obviously that 1 year was lockout shortened. If you project that out, which I may or may not have done, it's 57 wins in an 82-game season. So, like, it's not going to be about winning 70 or 65 or 60. It's going to be about how they're playing at the end of the season, how healthy they are, how much, you know. It's definitely false. And if fans are looking at those numbers as some kind of thing, like, I don't think it is. Because the fact of the matter is the Heat went to the finals 4 times, and they only won 60 games once.
They also had Dwayne Wade with his injury issues and being put on the bench for 28 games. You know that. I look at that Cavs team. I believe it was 08-09 that won 66.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Nowhere near the talent that this team has. And if you look at the mentality that they're taking going into the season, you know, LeBron's not going to settle just as the star player and the leader of that team for anything less than everyone's best all the time. And if that's what you get from every player on this team, if that's what you get from every assistant coach, I think they're going to dig deep, and on those nights where LeBron has an off night or Kevin Love has an off night or Kyrie or what have you, other guys, key guys we've talked about, Marion and Miller and maybe even James Jones, you'll have the Deion Waiters, they'll step up. I think this team's going to win 68. Right. Because here's the other thing I would challenge you to do. Look at the schedule and find me, you know, I picked 68, so find me 14 losses. I would, if you pick 60 or 55, find me those losses on the schedule and tell me that you as a fan wouldn't be pulling your hair out after that loss. You know, this league, there's a couple teams at the very top, and then I don't see today's NBA being a great NBA. I think there's a few great teams, the Cavaliers being one of them. So I can't find more than 14 losses on this schedule. The only caveat being, obviously, if LeBron blows out his knee or Kyrie, you know, misses 40 games or something crazy, which it's Cleveland, that happens.
Don't say
it, I know. But if everything goes relatively well. I think this team's going to win 68 basketball games.
We do have to wrap up soon, and I do want to get your guys' predictions, but there's one question, because I'm thinking about this, because we know this Cavs team is going to just try and outscore some people some nights. So I did some looking. The last team to average 110 points in a season was Phoenix back in 2009-2010. The Clippers
7 seconds
averaged
less.
107 last year. That was the NBA's best. So real quick, true or false? Can the Cavs do that? Can they average 110?
I'll say false. I'll go with like 108. Because this is the Eastern Conference, and there will be teams that game plan for the Cavs saying, kind of like the old Fratello Cavs, we got to slow the pace, play half court. So it's not just Cavs trying to run, it's the opposition slowing things down on the offensive end. So considering the conference we're in, how I think teams will approach the Cavs, I don't think they'll quite get to that 110-point plateau, but I think they'll be around 108, 107.
Yeah, I agree with Joe. I think it's not going to be to their own fault. It's going to be the way defenses are playing them and slowing down the pace and allowing fewer shots for the Cavaliers to take. And they're going to be efficient offensively. I mean, their per 100 possession might be in like the 120s. I mean, that's not going to be a question. It's how many shots they're going to get in the course of a game that's going to dictate that, and I don't think it's going to be enough.
Brendan, the Kevin Love outlet pass is enough to get him to 110.
Man, they might be, but no, I don't think they'll quite score that much. I was actually thinking, like, if this group was still together, maybe next year they would, but I think there's going to be some learning curve with the system and everything like that.
You're not allowed to say if this group is still together about next year. You
You're right.
can't
I shouldn't
think
even.
about
I don't know why I'm
rules here.
With opening night tomorrow, I don't know why I'm talking about that. But the point is, I think it's going to take a little while to infuse David Blatt's system to that degree.
That being said, when they freelance, Kevin Love, Kyrie-Irving, LeBron James, Deion Waiters, I mean, when everything falls apart for this basketball team, and we talk about the road bumps early on, I think just on their basketball IQ and skill alone, they're going to be able to win basketball games, even when everything goes wrong for them.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch. They might be the most fun to watch when everything breaks down.
Probably.
Predictions. What do you think? What do the Cavs do this year? How far do they get?
I say, and I've been on record with this before, 56 wins this season. They're not playing for April, they're playing for June, so the regular season isn't going to mean much at all. But I do think that the four of us are going to be hanging out on East 9th come June and throwing a few back, watching the parade float go by.
Brendan?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if they don't win the Eastern Conference Finals, that's a disappointment. They have to win the Eastern Conference. They have to advance to the finals. That's, to me, the bar. They don't necessarily have to win it this year, but I think they do.
We have this idea in today's NBA that you have to kind of take steps. LeBron, when he was here the first time, you have to get to the playoffs, and you need to win a series, and you need to win another series. It's changed. The Miami Heat went to the NBA Finals their first year of the Big Three with a questionable supporting cast, with a fit that really wasn't perfect. We talked about that earlier in the show. I fully expect the Cavaliers to go to the finals, win the NBA Finals. I think they're the most talented team in the NBA today. I think arguably they may have the highest collective basketball IQ in the NBA, one of the most underrated coaches. And unless we have some tragic injury or occurrence, my expectation, and I think it's a reasonable one, I'm not trying to play shill or eternal optimist, is that this is the best team, that everything will come together, and that we will be having a parade, and they will win the title.
There's a lot of optimism at this table in this city. That's why everybody's so excited about tomorrow. Brendan Bowers from Slam Magazine, Scott Sargent, waitingfornextyear.com, Joe Lull from 92.3 The Fan. Let's do this again, guys.
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure. Thanks for having me.
I'm Dan Labbe. Thanks for watching.